Welcome to Top Amazing Fact. You can barely keep your eyes open, surrounded by darkness. The air is damp, and an awful smell fills your nose. As you reach out, trying to make sense of your surroundings, you realize the walls are slick with some kind of slime, and they almost feel like they're breathing, alive. It's strange. Just an hour ago, you were on a yacht, sailing across the open ocean, the wind whipping through your hair. How did you end up here? Did your yacht wreck? Maybe you were pulled under by a sea monster, and now your body is trapped, a victim of the deep. Yes, that's exactly what happened. The slippery, slimy barrier around you? It's the walls of a whale's stomach. Can you survive and, more importantly, escape? First, let's see if it's even possible for a whale to swallow a fully grown adult human. According to experts, it's conceivable. A blue whale, part of the baleen subspecies, could easily swallow a human whole. Baleen whales are some of the largest creatures ever to exist on Earth, in the entire multi-billion-year history of life on this planet. And here's something in your favor: baleen whales don't have teeth, so you won't get chewed up before being swallowed. Baleen whales dwarf most dinosaurs in size. These ocean giants, which are mammals just like us, can reach up to 115 feet long, about 35 meters, and weigh a staggering 380,000 pounds, or roughly 173 metric tons. To put that into perspective, that's the weight of about 40 African elephants. Just the tongue of a baleen whale can weigh as much as 3 tons, and its heart is bigger than a golf cart. This enormous creature can hold up to 90 tons of food and water in its mouth at once. It can also gulp down around 11,000 pounds, 500 kilograms, of plankton in a single slurp. With such massive proportions, this whale's mouth could easily fit not just you, but also half the passengers from a ship like the Titanic. But here's where the swallowing act ends. A human body can't go any further than the entrance to the whale's throat. Despite its massive size, this giant creature has a throat no bigger than the diameter of a golf ball. It literally can't swallow anything larger than a small grapefruit. So, it's unlikely a whale would ever consider a human as lunch, since its digestive system is designed for much smaller prey. However, if you're ever on a doomed sea voyage and end up shipwrecked, it's not impossible that you could accidentally end up in a blue whale's mouth. That would be an unforgettable experience, to say the least, though you might not live to tell the tale. First, you'd fall into complete darkness, frantically flailing among the mass of small fish and plankton that the whale is preparing to eat. After it filters out the water, you'd find yourself trapped in a thick, slimy soup of sea creatures. The whale would then try to swallow its meal, but as we've mentioned, you simply wouldn't fit down its throat. According to Philip Mata, a researcher at the University of South Florida, the whale would likely just spit you out, like a cherry pit. But even if you survive this, your salvation is still far from certain. After eating, a whale can dive as deep as 650 feet, 200 meters, below sea level. Without diving equipment, you'd most likely drown at that depth. Luckily for you, these whales often digest their food at a depth of around 65 feet, 20 meters. In this case, you'd have a fighting chance to reach the surface, if you struggle with all your might. Who knows, the whale might even give you a helping hand, or tail fin, with a farewell slap as it spits you out. But falling into the jaws of a toothed whale, like an orca or sperm whale, is a whole different story. Surviving such an encounter would be much more difficult. These animals are also pretty huge. A single sperm whale can reach up to 65 feet, 20 meters, in length and weigh as much as 110,000 pounds, or 50 metric tons. The lower jaw of a toothed whale can open wide, up to 90 degrees, and its throat is big, really big, making it possible to swallow large prey, not just hold it in its mouth to spit out later. It's not uncommon to find entire seals and other animals in their stomachs, so swallowing a human wouldn't be a problem for them. Unlike baleen whales, toothed whales have large, razor-sharp teeth, like steak knives. So, on your way into a sperm whale's mouth, there's a high chance you'd suffer gruesome injuries from these terrifying teeth. There are documented cases where these dagger-like teeth have severed the arms, legs, and even heads of whalers in an instant. If, by some miracle, you avoid getting cut by those teeth, you'll still find yourself swallowed whole. You'll slide down the mucus-covered walls of the whale's digestive tract in total darkness, eventually landing in its stomach, where the walls are thick, slimy, and reek of decay. The sperm whale actually has 4 stomachs, just like a cow. And you'd end up in the first one. Unfortunately, this is likely where your terrifying journey would come to an end. Your body would quickly begin to dissolve in the deadly bath of gastric juices, which include the ever-terrifying hydrochloric acid. To make matters worse, you'd also start to suffocate since, of course, there's no air in the whale's stomach. It's true that whales have gas pockets in their intestines, but these are just gaps filled with noxious methane, not oxygen. So, they definitely won't help you breathe. Despite this, there are tons of stories floating around on social media about people surviving a journey through a whale's stomach. However, most experts dismiss these stories as bogus, likely made up just to attract attention and boost ratings. That said, there is some documentary evidence supporting a few incredible, almost unbelievable events. In 1896, the New York Times published a story about a whaling expedition near the Falkland Islands. The whaling ship Star of the East lowered its boats and began hunting a massive sperm whale. They harpooned the beast, but it fought back, destroying one of the boats and slipping away. After an exhaustive search, the crew couldn't find a sailor from the sunken boat, a man named James Bartley. A few hours later, the crew came across the now dead sperm whale. The harpoon injury had eventually killed it. As they began carving up the whale, they made a shocking discovery inside its stomach, something big, unexpected, and definitely out of place. It turned out to be the missing sailor. James Bartley had spent nearly 16 hours inside the sea monster, unconscious but miraculously still alive. His hands and face had turned a ghastly pale from the whale's gastric juices, making him look more like a corpse than a living man. His skin was deeply wrinkled, as if he had been boiled alive in a giant cauldron. For the next 2 weeks, Bartley was in a state of near insanity. He didn't seem to recognize his shipmates and refused to speak to anyone for several weeks. Finally, by the end of the 3rd week, Bartley came back to his senses and recovered enough to return to work. However, the unnaturally pale skin on his face, neck, and hands, those parts of his body that had been exposed to the whale's stomach acids, served as a constant reminder of his time inside the sperm whale. These visible scars were a lifelong testament that he had once been swallowed whole by a leviathan from the deep and lived to tell the tale. The story of James Bartley caught the attention of an English zoologist, Professor Ambrose Wilson, in the late 1920s. After carefully reviewing the case, Wilson concluded that Bartley really could have survived inside the whale's stomach. Wilson even uncovered another similar case from deep within old archives. In 1771, a sperm whale bit a whaler's boat in half, swallowed one of the sailors, and disappeared underwater. After some time, the whale resurfaced and spat out its victim. Although the sailor was understandably terrified and suffered some scratches, he amazingly escaped without serious injury. It seems that particular whale didn't find the sailor to its taste, but that doesn't mean other whales wouldn't consider humans edible. So, if you ever find yourself in a whale's stomach, first thing, don't panic. The amount of air, and therefore oxygen, inside a whale is extremely limited. Every unnecessary movement brings you closer to suffocation. Now, everything depends on what type of whale has swallowed you. It's difficult to figure this out from the inside, so try to identify the whale before you get swallowed. Since there's concentrated hydrochloric acid in the stomach, you'll need to quickly find a way back up the esophagus. Otherwise, your skin will suffer painful and potentially deadly burns. If you're inside a toothed whale, you'll need to move fast to get through all 4 chambers of its stomach. The real challenge begins when your acid-burned body reaches the throat. If you're inside a toothless blue whale, the only way out would be to shrink down to the size of a tennis ball, which, obviously, is impossible. Maybe your pet cat or chihuahua could make it out if they're with you, but you certainly won't. If it's a sperm whale with teeth, you might be able to get back into its mouth. But you'll then have to pass through a gauntlet of sharp, dagger-like teeth. Even if you manage to escape, you could lose a hand or a leg in the process, both of which you'd need to swim to safety. But remember, Getting into a sperm whale's stomach in one piece is almost impossible in the first place. These creatures, like us, chew their food thoroughly before swallowing it. So, in a nutshell, your chances of surviving are incredibly slim. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss our latest and greatest videos.